change your heart, change your life, change the planet.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Van Orden, and I am so excited that I just can't hide it. Because Audible is having a gigantic super sale going on right now. But it ends today, like today, August 31st at midnight Pacific time. So you got to jump on this. There's 200 books on sale from 99 cents up to $4.95. And I've never seen so many amazing books on offer for sale at one time. I've read probably 30 of the books in this list, and I bought an additional 20 plus today, this morning, when I found out about the sale. And I'm so pumped that I just had to make this video because I think that moving your body and listening to amazing information just changes everything. It's changed my life. I think it's a great way to shift whatever state we are stuck in and to expose us to new information and really, really gently and beautifully transform our lives. So I'm going to give you my recommendations from this list. But first, in order to take advantage of this sale, you need to be an Audible member. So if you're already an Audible member, go knock yourself out. If you're not, you can click this link right here and you can sign up for a free 30-day trial. You get to take advantage of this sale. Any book you buy is yours for the sale price. You get one free book during that trial in addition. And if you want to cancel any time in that 30 days, go ahead and cancel. You get to keep your free book, and you get to keep any of the books that you bought in the sale. And also, you help me out by clicking this link and signing up for a membership. I get a little wee commission, and over the long term, that helps out a bit. Okay, so here are my recommendations. I'm going to do this list in order of significance to me. So I'm going to start out with books that I have read that have the highest rating. I've got 3 books in this list that have 4 stars, and it's pretty rare that I give a book 4 stars, but there's 3 of them here. Then there's 1 book that I gave 3.5 stars, and then there are 11 books that I've given 3 stars, which is still a high rating in my book. And then the rest of the books are those that I have purchased but have not read yet, and I will list those in order of my excitement to read them. So I'm going to start out with the book that I think has the most value on this entire list, or in this sale, and that is At the Edge of Uncertainty by Michael Brooks. I gave this book 4 stars when I read it. Really, really phenomenal read. It's about the current limits of science. Essentially what we know and how new discoveries are changing what we know and even shaking the foundations of our collective knowledge a bit. And more importantly, how science needs to embrace uncertainty in order to move forward, and that the moment we think that we have all the answers, science stops, progress stops. People stop looking for new information, or they ignore new information coming in if it contradicts or conflicts with the currently held dogma. So, At the Edge of Uncertainty, highly recommend this book. The next up is Rewire. Change Your Brain to Break Bad Habits, Overcome Addictions, Conquer Self-Destructive Behavior by Richard O'Connor. Another 4-star book. I got so much out of this book. And it gives you a great description of how your brain actually works, how habits are formed, and what you can do to transform those habits. The next 4-star book is The Little Book of Talent by Daniel Coyle. And this is an abbreviated version of his bigger book, The Talent Code, which I also really liked and gave 4 stars. But this is an hour and 51 minutes with all of his best nuggets of information and tools and tips to help you get access to all the information in the Talent Code. So highly recommend The Little Book of Talent. The next is The Addictive Brain by The Teaching Company, and I'm giving this one 3.5 stars. If you want to get into the biology, the neurochemistry, the biochemistry of addiction, whether on a large scale like a cocaine addiction or on a very small scale, being addicted to television, being addicted to certain foods, being addicted to whatever it might be, exercise or even work, being a workaholic. This book will give you a fantastic foundation for understanding the science and physiology and chemistry of those particular habits and how to change them. Actually help you understand what addiction is. The next book is The Now Habit
by Neil Fiore. This is my first 3-star book on the list. There's a lot of great information in here and how to get yourself into the moment to take a step right now, and how to build habits by focusing on what you can work with right now. And this goes very well with my philosophy of little dewdrops. Next up is The Introvert Advantage, How to Thrive in an Extrovert World by Marty Olson-Laney. And I've got a lot of good stuff from this book. I only gave it 3 stars, but there's a lot of gems in there. And if you are an introvert and you want to understand your brain better and why your brain does what it does, why you behave the way that you do, this book is going to help you get a clearer picture of what is going on in your physical brain and what is going on in your unconscious mind, and how to best work with that to employ your strengths as an introvert so that you can actually begin to see these qualities as advantageous. Next up, The 5 Keys to Mindful Communication by Susan Gillis Chapman. Another really good 3-star book, basically about using the principles of mindfulness to engage in better communication. Are you actually listening? Are you being mindful of the emotions that the other person is experiencing while they communicate? Are you mindful of your own emotions when you're communicating? Are you mindful of the words? Are you mindful of what led you to have this conversation and to share these particular words, or to understand what your intentions are? Really, really good book to help you get mindful and present to communication from a very deep, honest level. Next 3-star book is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Big fan of Brene's work, and there's a lot of great stories in here, a lot of research that she has done on shame and rejection and self-worth, and this is a really important read for anybody that's got issues with their self and would like to feel more empowered in this world. Next up is The Inexplicable Universe by The Teaching Company. The Teaching Company books are really a series of lectures. So it's done very much like a college course with normally 12 45-minute lectures. And this particular lecture series is taught by Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is a famous astrophysicist who has a couple shows on television. Really popular guy, popular educator. And this book explores what we currently know about the universe and what our current theories are that are leading our research as we try to better understand our place in the universe and how the universe works. Really fascinating information and quite humbling as well when you begin to see how big the universe is and what it all means. Next book is The 5 Elements of Effective Thinking by Edward Berger and Michael Starbird. Good book. A lot of really interesting information in here about how to be more effective in your thinking. And I know that sounds like a repeat of the title, but it's quite accurate. Most of our thinking is totally ineffective. Most of our thinking is emotionally driven, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're getting the effect that you desire. So this is a great book for helping you understand how to step outside of the emotional urges that your brain is pushing you towards and have thoughts which lead to actions which lead to results that are not tied up in the emotional current that's flowing through you. So, good book. Next up is Take the Stairs by Rory Vaden. This is a medium-sized book. It's a little over 4 hours, packed with a lot of good stories and a lot of good information. And it's all about taking the stairs rather than taking the easy route. And that's a metaphor, but it's also an actuality in this book and in my life as well. That if you've got stairs and an escalator next to it, taking the escalator may get you to the top a little faster, but you didn't do any work. You didn't learn anything. You didn't exert any effort. You didn't find out what your limits were, and you didn't grow. You just got somewhere new. But the person at the bottom of the escalator is the same person at the top. Whereas if you take the stairs, the person changes along the way because of the effort you're putting in and because of the limitations that you're going to be confronted by, which hopefully push you into more creativity and more effectiveness as you see what you're actually capable of. So, good book. I like this one. Next up, we have The Buddha Walks into a Bar by Lodro Rinsler. And there's a lot of fun stories in here, and he's got a neat take on Buddhism and applying it to a modern world and extracting it from the historical religious Buddhism that many people have been presented with. So this is a fun way to look at Buddhist teaching or Buddhist psychology and apply it to your own life, and I found some really neat gems in there. Next up is Off Balance by Matthew Kelly. And this book is all about this myth that you have work and you have life and you have to balance them. And the premise is that if you really love what you do, if you really see what you do as part of who you are and you can incorporate that into every moment of your life, then you don't really need to have this balance. It's not like there's this huge distinction between work and life. That work can become life, and not in an obsessive way, but that you feel fulfilled while you're at work. And therefore it's not something that takes away from your life, but actually something that adds to your life. Good stuff in there. Next is Rejection Proof by Jia Jiang. And this book has some neat stories and some interesting information about fear. And although I don't totally buy into the idea of beating fear, I'm much more about being next to fear and simply observing it and allowing yourself to have fear. There are some really neat tips in here on how to work in the midst of fear and not be held back by it. Next up is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And this is the last of the books that I've read in this list. I expected this book to be a 5-star book, but I only gave it 3 stars because there's a lot of wishful thinking in this book. There's some great stories, and it is very, very compelling, and I do see a lot of value in what he says, but I also see there's a searching, and that's what the book about is, this search for meaning. And although he ascribes this as something that is incredibly positive, my own experience and the research that I've done leads me to believe that that's not necessarily the case, and that there are better ways. But at the time that Viktor Frankl was going through this, this was a really effective way of looking at things, but I think we've moved on. So really fascinating story, but not a perfect idea of what to do with the human brain in difficult situations. So the books that I haven't read yet, but I've purchased, the first is The Drunkard's Walk, How Randomness Rules Our Lives by Leonard Mlodinow. And he also wrote a book called Subliminal, which I really, really liked, so I'm excited to check out this. And this goes along with the books that I've been reading by Nassim Taleb, such as The Black Swan, Fooled by Randomness, and Anti-Fragile. And this will hopefully give me a greater picture, more context into how randomness actually dictates much more of our lives than we would like to believe. Next up is A Mind for Numbers by Barbara Oakley. And I've heard about this book for quite some time. I heard her interviewed on NPR and how she approaches teaching math. And although I've been pretty good at math my whole life, it was not a labor of love. It's something that I could muscle my way through, but I never really embraced it. So the moment I didn't have to take math classes anymore, I stopped. And I regret that now, because math is something that I find fascinating, not on the abstract level that it's taught in school, but simply because this is how the world works. This is how the universe works. It doesn't use the principles of math. That's something that human beings created to describe what's happening. But understanding ratios and how things interact with each other, to me, is just fascinating. So coming to terms with that mathematical language is something that I'm interested in. Next up is Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. And my brain wants to say peace in every step, but it's peace is every step. And I really like this. This is the path that I'm on at the moment. And my goal is to find peace regardless of what is showing up. Every step that I take, regardless of how uncertain it may be, I want to find peace in it, and I want to work with what does show up. Because that's how you become the most effective. Not by rejecting what shows up, but by being peaceful and accepting what shows up. So I'm looking forward to this one. Next we have Surely You're Joking, Mr. Fineman, by Richard Fineman, who's probably the world's most famous physicist. Nobel Prize winner. He worked on the Manhattan Project during World War II. He was one of the key figures in figuring out why the space shuttle blew up back in the 80s. And just a really, really fascinating mind and man. And he really made physics accessible to so many people in the world by the way that he taught it. So I'm excited to dig in there. Next is The Clockwork Universe by Edward Dolnick. And I'm interested in the history of knowledge and how our education has evolved, how science has evolved, because it teaches you a lot about the mind and society and culture, and that we can look at the information that we have right now and think that it's always been that way, but it hasn't. Education has evolved, intelligence has evolved, science has evolved, so I do a lot of reading into the history of science and the history of thinking, because it helps me to better understand my own thinking and my own path and how that relates to the world around me. Because sometimes thoughts and new ideas or new findings may not be embraced by the culture that you're in. So this is a book that interests me. Next up is Stuff Matters, which is about materials and what they do in our life and our world, by Mark Miadonik. And this is a book that I'm excited to get into, just to look at everyday objects and what they're made of and how we created them and how we might have discovered them and how they might have evolved over time. It's something that makes me really curious because we take so many of the things in our life for granted. Next up is Find the Good by Heather Lendy. She's an obituary writer and noticed over the years that when people write obituaries, they generally tend to find the good in people's lives. Nobody wants to write the perfect, honest, brutal truth. We go back and we look for the key moments that were positive so we can remember the person in a positive light. So this is a book that I'm curious about so that I can go back and find the good in my life. That doesn't mean ignoring everything else and only focusing on the good, but making sure that I don't forget the good, making sure that I'm present to the fact that good things have happened. Next up is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. That title scares me a bit, but I want to see her perspective. I want to see where she's coming from, what she's been through, what she's learned. And it's got a lot of great ratings on Audible, 8,734 ratings so far. So we'll see. I'm sure I'll get something out of it. I don't know, but I'm sure I'll get something. Next up is Solving the Procrastination Puzzle by Timothy Pichol, it looks like. 2 hours and 29 minutes. That'll be a quick read. I read my books at double speed, or should I say I listen to them at double speed, so I'll get through that in an hour and 15 minutes, probably this afternoon. And I'm curious about what he has to say about procrastination. It's a topic that many of us think about, so I'm willing to give that one a try. Because these books are so cheap in this sale, why not? Next up is How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big by Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert. Again, I'm sure it's going to be about his rise to stardom as a cartoonist, and he probably failed a lot along the way, and there's probably some great stories and lessons in there, and I'm curious to tune in and find out what his life has been like and how he got to where he is. And hopefully he realizes that a lot of it has probably just been random. Next is A Little History of Philosophy by Nigel Warburton. And again, I love historical books, especially about how our knowledge came to be where it is at present, like what big ideas helped shape humanity and Western civilization. So I'm curious to dig in here and see what types of ideas got us here that I may not have heard of yet. Next is Earth Moved on the Remarkable Achievements of Earthworms by Amy Stewart. Being a gardener myself, I've always been fascinated by earthworms and what they do, but I don't know a whole lot about them, so I'm curious to dig into this book and better understand the earthworm and how it affects the soil and everything that we grow and eat. Next is The Elements of Eloquence Secrets of the Perfect Turn of Phrase by Mark Forsyth. I can write, but I'm not a great writer. So I'm hoping that there are some gems in this book that are easily accessible that can help transform my writing, and I'm looking forward to putting these ideas into practice. And finally, Unfair, The New Science of Criminal Justice by Adam Benferrato. I've been doing a lot of research into the mind and human tendency and behavior, and what we're discovering is that our criminal justice system is a little broken in more than one way. It's broken in how we see individuals and how we see intent and what does a criminal mind look like. And it's also broken in the fact that juries are made up of human beings that are easily biased and bring those biases into the courtroom and bring their own personal experience and feeling into the courtroom. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe something happened in their life. Maybe they didn't eat. Maybe they ate the wrong food. Who knows what? Even judges. There are many studies done now showing that depending on the time of day, judges will make different decisions. Harsher sentences if they're hungry and lighter sentences after they've eaten. So a lot of the justice system is driven by erratic or what one might call irrational human behavior, not just the criminals, but the system itself. So it's far from perfect, and we're learning a great deal about the human mind and how it behaves on both sides of the bench. So I'm interested in what is said in this book. So there we go.
I hope you find value in these books, and if you do, reach out and let me know. There'll be plenty of book review videos coming out. I think I'm going to do one book at a time instead of doing a massive number of books all at once. It's a bit overwhelming. So as those book review videos come out, let me know if you've read that book and how it affected you. Comments, criticisms, whatever you got. All right? I love you guys. See you soon. And it ends at midnight, so act now. Click this link. And also, by clicking this link right here, you can sign up for a free